I don't like Julian Assange either, but come on. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. My name is Crispin, and today I want to talk about Julian Assange and Wikileaks. Yes, I don't like talking about Julian Assange because he strikes me as this egomaniac who's doing everything basically for himself and doesn't have any real sense of public duty or public service, that this is all basically his nostalgia fantasy, and the fact that some people are beguiled by him personally is something that I won't quite understand. This ego is wafer thin, right? Nevertheless, he's a human being. He's an Australian citizen. He has rights. He hasn't actually done anything really wrong. And the way he's being treated is massively important for journalism, for our individual human rights, for the way in which state power is being exercised in a totally illegitimate way, and the cowardice, the abject cowardice, or in fact willful collaboration of the Australian government is something that needs to be condemned. This idea that Julian Assange is getting the appropriate level of consular assistance, etc., is not true. Okay, it's simply false. If the Australian government wanted to protect his rights, they absolutely would be able to. And I want to first of all explain why WikiLeaks hasn't really done anything wrong, okay? And also why, more importantly even, the American response has been absurd, aside from being, morally wrong. So first of all, there are things from WikiLeaks that we have learned about that we absolutely, as a community, as a politic, needed to know. I remember clearly the attack from the Apache helicopter on just innocent, unarmed civilians in Iraq, just gunning them down for giggles, okay? That was released to the public via WikiLeaks. It was a critical thing that we needed to understand about the crimes that were being perpetrated in our name on foreign soil. And then the most famous case, of course, was the cache of diplomatic cables released via Bradley and Chelsea Manning through the US State Department, okay? Now, I have read a lot of those cables. I've read all of the cables that have come out of Australia. I read thousands of cables from other parts of the world, the things that interest me. And the funny thing is, and the surprising thing, yes, there are some names in there, there's some things that are embarrassing and, a little bit whatever, but vast majority of these cables, and the big story that it showed, was that the US State Department officials are sincere. This was the surprising thing, right? That they tend to say in private what they say in public. There is a sincerity about the values in which they espouse of freedom, liberty, democracy, human rights. And they generally want to promote the common good. And they're doing that through a variety of dedicated means. So I think the US government had a huge positive story to tell about the release of these cables. That was like, yes, they're classified. Yes, we're, embarrassed for our friends and allies who might have been left red-faced. But, this demonstrates beyond anything else that we do mean what we say, and we are trying to do good. And also is a great testament to the skill and thoughtfulness of these public officials that have working for the US government. For example, one cable predicted Kevin Rudd would be removed as Australian Prime Minister. Okay, yet 10 years kind of on the wrong timescale, but still they understood the framework of the Labor Party's factional system, how it all worked. This is real insider insight for the US government in terms of the way the Australian politics works, and a testament to the US American officials who reported on it. Like the fact that because of Hillary Clinton's own vanity project, that the entire US government came slamming down on this one guy for releasing something that was embarrassing, that it wasn't his responsibility to protect, but the responsibility of the US government. And in fact, it did probably a great service to the US government that it was these things, these classified materials that were released. If they continued with this completely absurd, non-existent form of protecting their secret information, imagine what else might have been released down the track. Imagine how vulnerable it would have been to America's enemies, China and so on. This was a real wake-up call and allowed them to tighten up their security. So aside from the fact that it demonstrated a positive thing for the American officials, it also did the American security apparatus a favor as well. And yet, because of just the Hillary Obama obsession about this, the entire Western world fell down upon Julian Assange's head and forced him into hiding in an embassy, right? And then the abject embarrassment, and I've never been so embarrassed to be an Australian, to be honest. The Australian government, Julia Gillard, she was totally illegitimate as a prime minister, never won a seat, a majority in the House of Representatives, knifed a popular prime minister, and she didn't see Julian Assange as a citizen whose rights she had to protect, but as an opportunity to suck up to Obama and Hillary Clinton. I mean, she subsequently appeared in a Hillary Clinton campaign video in 2016. I mean, this is outrageous. So she threw Assange under the bus as hard as she could in order to, get ingratiated with the White House of that time. And frankly, the Australian government since then hasn't been doing enough to uphold his individual rights. I mean, I personally am not enamored by WikiLeaks, what it's done. I also believe, absolutely that the quarters from which it has received some protection over the past few years are not the sorts of things that align with our national interest. I understand that. I understand people's criticism of him personally, okay? But it's not about him. It's about journalism. It's about the rights of individuals to understand what's happening in their name. And it's about the necessity of our government to protect us. So what's happening to Assange going to happen to you or to me, right? And just that awareness makes this unacceptable. So Assange goes into hiding in this embassy, and the whole world is criticizing him for saying, well, look, there is no extradition to the United States in train or planned. There's no evidence that this is the case, et cetera, et cetera. He's just trying to avoid, facing the music for crimes in Sweden. Well, first of all, what he was accused of in Sweden would not be a crime in Australia or most parts of English common law, right? I don't want to go into the detail. It's basically been expired anyway. The charges have largely been dropped. But Sweden has unique laws in this space that do not apply to Australia, do not apply to the UK, do not apply to the United States. And therefore, I would be reluctant to say that he's accused even of sexual assault, because it wouldn't be sexual assault in Australia, right? And yet he gets kicked out of the embassy, right, because of the new regime in Ecuador, sucking up to the White House, and he's immediately arrested on extradition hearings. For what? For what? I mean, they're saying that he induced people to disclose classified information. Well, we all know that that's not true. He doesn't have that power. He didn't have millions of dollars to offer people as a bribe to say, go spy on the US government. What happened was he acted as a journalist. Someone came to him and said, look, I have this information. Will you release it? And he said, yes, I'll protect your identity. I'm a journalist, and give it to WikiLeaks and we will publish it, right? And that's exactly what he did, like any journalist in the world, okay? Yes, there were certain ethics that he skipped. He should have cut out names. He should have done more to protect people's identities, et cetera, et cetera. But nevertheless, the things for which he's accused are not true. He's being persecuted for an extended period of time. And this, in my mind, and hopefully in yours, is happening to us because we could be in that same situation, right? We absolutely could. And my sentiments towards the guy personally cannot separate from that fact. And you can separate the person from the act. Like when Edward Snowden released all of that material. Well, I actually think that Edward Snowden as an individual is more likable, but I also think his actions were far more reprehensible, for which he should actually be prosecuted, right? He was trusted with classified information. It was his job to protect it, right? And he willfully disclosed that information publicly and then ran off to Russia, right? Like that. There's a word for that, is traitor, right? I like the guy, okay? I think he's sincere in his motivations. I don't think he's evil, but he is responsible in a way that Julian Assange, who frankly is much less likable than someone I wouldn't want to associate with, he didn't do anything wrong, okay? So for that reason, we need to release Julian Assange. The Australian government, stop embarrassing us on the world stage, grow a pair and say he should be released because he should be. Look, let me know your thoughts on this. Oh, and look, there are other things, before I round this up, that the Americans have not been complaining about, right? Julian Assange, WikiLeaks released 2.5 million emails from the Assad regime, right? Not that long ago, a couple of years ago. Where was the hysteria about that? No, that served the Western interest. It was something that was clearly made available to him, which he then released. Completely sincere. Okay. So yeah, I'm sure WikiLeaks does have ties to groups that are antithetical to the United States, but I don't think they're acting on that bequest. I think it's just because Assange has been persecuted across the world that he has to get help wherever he can. And it would be helpful if it would be his own government for a change. So that's my view. But I know I've ranted a bit, but please give us your opinion. Do you disagree with me on Julian Assange? Do you disagree with me on Edward Snowden? We'd love to have that discussion. And if you gain value from this, do like. And if you want to hear more rants like this in future, please subscribe. And thank you very much for tuning in.